really hard to predict. Will people come back as we think they will? So we're watching to see what behaviors we need to support.
This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Since lockdowns began, a big portion of the workforce did a 180 on their early morning routines. The scramble to make breakfast, grab your coffee, and sit in rush hour traffic turned into rolling out of bed, slightly brushing or curl, sponging your hair, and opening up a laptop for Zoom meetings. Regardless of where you work life looked pretty different this past year in one way or another. And for a lot of people and companies, the changes brought on by the pandemic have reshaped how and where we work. So that's our focus tonight, the future of work. For many workers, that future has to start with dealing with burnout. Employees say they've experienced more burnout as homes also became offices, and the line between where we relax and where we work became blurred. For the uninitiated, Merriam-Webster defines burnout as exhaustion of physical or emotional strength, or motivation usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. A survey this spring from Indeed found 52% of American workers say they've experienced burnout. Because of that, some larger companies started a trend this year, a nearly company-wide week off. To give workers some much-needed R&R, LinkedIn, Bumble, and Mozilla all gave most of their staff a company-wide week off in 2021. That's on top of whatever vacation time they already had. I wouldn't be opposed to a week off in case my boss's boss is listening, but is more time off really the simple solution to that burnout so many people have been feeling?
This is definitely a great step, but it's still a first step. And that we need to recognize that burnout is going to be an ongoing conversation. It's always been in the background, but I think that during COVID, it definitely took the forefront.
These companies and others are also implementing things like burnout training for managers, no meeting days, and letting people take off additional days throughout the year. Of course, burnout doesn't hit everybody the same. Women are reporting that they experience more burnout than men, and women of color are facing burnout even more.
Women are expected to parent like they don't work and work like they don't parent. And the problem is you can't be in two places at the same time.
According to McKinsey's 2020 Women in the Workplace study, 39% of women in senior level positions say they are burned out compared to 29% of men. The study also reports that Black women were already having a worse experience in the workplace than most other employees. Data from the study of women's health across the nation shows, on average, Black women will biologically age 7.5 years more in their lifetime than white women due to added stress in their daily lives. From facing added scrutiny to discrimination to lack of opportunities for advancement, stress is aging Black women in dog years, y'all. And they tired.
Black women especially don't feel supported by leadership. And we know that in general, if women of color or women in general saw more representation on leadership levels, that they're more likely to actually outperform their peers.
So how do we eliminate burnout? There likely isn't a panacea for something like this, but some companies have tried to address the problem by rethinking what a workday looks like. Some companies are offering more flexible schedules, letting employees choose when they want to work, whether it's 7 to 3 or 12 to 8, as long as they're able to get their work done. That probably doesn't help in getting people on the same Zoom at the same time, but this allows people to shape their schedules around their lifestyles and have a bit more agency in finding the right work-life balance. Some countries like Spain and Japan have taken it a step further by testing out a 4-day work week. According to ZipRecruiter, the number of job listings with 4-day work weeks has quadrupled in the past 5 years. And studies show that productivity increases with a 4-day work week, people are happier, and it's better for the environment. Ultimately, a lot of these attempts to mitigate burnout revolve around giving workers more flexibility in how they manage their professional and personal lives. It's something a lot of folks got used to during the pandemic and might be hesitant to give up.
We're at a unique point in history where if employers don't actually make massive change in the way that they are looking or treating their employees, they're going to lose them.
The pandemic hasn't just changed the way we work, it's also changed the spaces we work in. So it's no wonder that folks have been rethinking the way offices are designed and function. Newsy's Kat Sandoval brings us a detailed look at how workspaces are already changing to prepare for the post-pandemic era.
Across the U.S., Americans are gearing up for a return to a post-pandemic work life. It could very well look very different in an office or fully remote or a hybrid of some sort.
We're going to see a wide range of solutions. There are people who are already back. There are those that are mandated to be back all the time. There are those who say, I will be there infrequently. And there's a wide range somewhere in between those two extremes.
Odd thing happened during the pandemic. Turns out some people don't need to actually be at work to keep working, and that could continue. McKinsey & Company found more than 20% of the workforce could work remotely just as effectively 3 to 5 days a week. The pandemic forced workers and companies to reevaluate the right way to work.
I think we're in a moment of transition where a lot of organizations are trying to figure out what works for them and their people and their culture. And most organizations say they're going to adopt hybrid work, but they've never really done it before, and they're kind of trying to figure it out as they go.
A Steelcase Global report found nearly a quarter of all businesses will continue to work primarily in the office. Only about 5% will work from home. Most will blend a few days at home and a few days at the office. Figuring it out and work flexibility seem to be the theme as COVID mandates change and new variants appear. As Casanova points out, there is no one work solution that fits all.
So what we're expecting to find is chaos. This is hard. This is how do you satisfy the business need, the fairness, and also the individual ask of what I want.
Both Casanova and Congdon work for companies that create office spaces and products for businesses, and they both predict that those partitions, social distance desk, and stickers will soon disappear.
What we're seeing is a shift as organizations are recognizing as vaccines are far more widespread. There's less of an emphasis on distancing or division and separation, and more of an emphasis on what kind of experience do we want to create for people when they come back to the office.
A Castle Security Systems survey found only about a third of workers are back in the office. And when it comes to large cities, San Francisco and New York have the lowest occupancy at 18 and 20%. Even with these small numbers, it is slowly increasing. In Chicago this week, the regional rail train began adding back trains downtown.
People are looking to get back in the office, and I think you're seeing that in the trend lines as people start to get more comfortable, as they start getting vaccinated, they're able to get back into the office. They just want to be there.
It's really hard to predict. Will people come back as we think they will? So we're watching to see what behaviors we need to support.
Those folks returning to the office will see some changes like touchless access that uses cell phones to enter buildings or call elevators.
When you think about some of the nature of those kinds of features, they become just a better experience when you are engaging with the office.
For Newsy, I'm Kat Sandoval.
So far, we've really focused on what the future of work looks like for people who had to pack it up and take their jobs to go during the pandemic. We recently partnered with our friends over at Ipsos, who found that a majority of respondents in the workforce did experience remote work firsthand over the last year and a half. But plenty of Americans working essential frontline jobs never did the whole remote work thing. So what does the future of work look like for people who never left the workplace? The CDC defines essential workers as those who conduct a range of operations and services in industries that are essential to ensure the continuity of critical functions in the US. Basically, without them, America would be sloppier than a soup sandwich. There are tens of millions of essential workers, and they aren't just doctors or nurses or other healthcare professionals. They work in grocery stores, warehouses, provide daycare, etc. Half of all workers in the US with jobs that pay less than $15 an hour are essential workers, and they continue to do their jobs during the pandemic despite greater risk of illness from the coronavirus. A lot of these industries are being disrupted, especially ones where person-to-person interaction is most common. One way that's happening is through automation, especially in the service industry. If you've been out to a restaurant or a bar over the last few months, chances are you've come across a QR or quick response code to limit interaction. Honestly, high school curricula should have been teaching us how to interact with QR codes instead of calculus. While QR codes were already ubiquitous in places like China, the pandemic really punched QR adoption in the US into hyperdrive. Some medical settings have leaned into technology to safely assess patients' needs during the pandemic. One example, our colleague Lindsay Thies took us inside a medical center in Denver, Colorado that began using iPads as a way to virtually triage patients. That cut down on the amount of time people spent in waiting rooms, possibly around other people who were sick. One of the biggest changes that we're seeing, though, is people leaving their professions for something else. According to the Labor Department, more US workers are quitting their jobs than any time in the last 20 years, especially those essential workers in food services and retail. And full circle here from the top of the show, with more than half the American workforce saying they feel burnt out, workers are looking for better, higher paying, and safer jobs by the millions. When you're back, we've got the latest on the fight over voting rights in the US.